Part 1 expanded approximately 700 words. The last stretch of road leading to the Hartley Ranch felt endless, a ribbon of dry earth twisting between colorless hills. Alina's legs ached with every step, her backpack digging painfully into her shoulders, but she kept going. She had no choice. The nearest town was long behind her, and the whispers she'd gathered at the dusty roadside diner all pointed here. If anyone still hires strangers, it's Hartley. He's rough, but he's fair. By the time she reached the crooked wooden gate, the sun hung low and heavy, bleeding orange light across the fields. The ranch stretched farther than she expected, wide pastures, weather-worn barns, fences in need of repair. It carried the air of a place once full of life, now kept alive by sheer grit. She hesitated at the gate. A stranger approaching a ranch at dusk usually earned suspicion, maybe even a rifle pointed her way. But fear had stopped serving her long ago. Survival had taken its place. She pushed the gate open. Gravel crunched under her boots as she walked toward the porch. Before she could call out, the front door swung open, and a tall figure stepped into the fading light. The rancher, Thomas Hartley. He filled the doorway like a man carved into the land itself. Broad shoulders, worn jeans, a shirt rolled up at the sleeves, revealing arms strengthened by decades of work. His face was hard to read, lined by sun and old grief. His hat shaded his eyes, but she could feel them on her, measuring her, as if the land itself had called to warn him she was coming. "You lost?" he asked. The deep, quiet rasp of his voice held neither welcome nor hostility, just caution. Elena straightened her back and forced air into her lungs. "No, sir. I'm looking for work." Most men would have shut the door right then. He didn't. He stepped out onto the porch, dust lifting around his boots. "What kind of work?" "Any kind," she said quickly. "I can shovel stalls, clean, cook, mend fences. I learn fast. I just need a chance." Her voice cracked at the last word, and she cursed herself for it. Showing weakness was dangerous. Showing desperation was worse. But her journey had stripped away whatever careful mask she once wore. Thomas studied her in silence long enough that she shifted her weight, unsure whether to stand her ground or retreat. The wind rustled through the dry grass around them, carrying the faint scent of horses and something like coming rain. Finally, he turned and pushed the door open wider. "Come inside." For a moment she wondered if it was a test. But she stepped through, blinking as the dim interior wrapped around her. The house smelled of cedarwood, dust, and old leather. A single lamp cast warm light over a living room that looked untouched for months, maybe years. A mantel above the fireplace held 3 faded photographs: a young woman with a radiant smile, a small boy sitting proudly on a pony, and the same boy held in his mother's arms. Alina's heart tugged at the quiet sorrow hanging in the air. Thomas set a cup on the table and filled it with cool water. "Sit." She obeyed, wrapping her hands around the cup, letting its chill ground her. He leaned against the counter, arms crossed, studying her the same way a man studies a horse he isn't sure he can trust yet. "There's work here," he said at last. "But not the kind you're probably expecting." Her brows pulled together. "Sir, this ranch is barely holding together. The storms took out half the fencing last spring. The cattle are skittish, the barn roof leaks, and there's more to do than one man can manage." He paused, his gaze drifting toward the unused hallway where the house felt the emptiest. "But taking someone on isn't simple. Especially someone with no history or references." Alina's stomach nodded. He continued, his voice lower now. "Still, you walked all the way here. Didn't turn back. Didn't lie about what you can or can't do. That counts for something." Hope flickered inside her, fragile but bright. Part 2 expanded approximately 700 words. Elena woke before the sun the next morning, as if her body sensed that whatever she had stepped into required every ounce of alertness she possessed. The sky was still deep blue when she met Thomas outside, his silhouette already moving with purpose across the yard. He didn't waste time with greetings. Instead, he tossed her a pair of worn leather gloves. "You'll need those," he said. Long day ahead. She followed him without question. The ranch felt bigger in the early light, vast, quiet, almost intimidating. The horses shifted restlessly in their stalls as they approached, their hooves thudding softly against the wooden boards. Thomas watched how she moved among them, how she glanced into each stall, her hands gentle but cautious when touching the prickly-backed gelding near the end. "You comfortable around horses?" he asked. "Not experienced," she admitted. "But I'm not afraid of them." He nodded once, as though that mattered more than any training she could have claimed. The morning blurred into a series of grueling tasks: lifting bales of hay heavier than she imagined, carrying water buckets to distant troughs, clearing debris from a broken fence line. Thomas didn't hover over her, but he didn't disappear either. He watched from a distance, observing everything, from how she handled frustration when the wheelbarrow tipped over, to how she bit down her pain when a splinter buried itself deep in her palm. She didn't complain once, not when her shoulders burned, not when sweat stung her eyes, not even when exhaustion made her vision tilt for a moment. By noon, she sank onto an overturned bucket, panting. Thomas handed her a metal canteen without a word. She took it gratefully, gulping the cool water. "You kept up better than I expected," he said, sitting on a nearby fence rail. "Most people quit before lunchtime." She shrugged, though every muscle in her body trembled. "I've done harder things." His gaze sharpened slightly, curious, but he didn't press. The afternoon was worse. The north pasture fence was half blown down from a storm that had ripped through weeks earlier. Thomas showed her how to brace the posts, how to use the tension wires properly, how to read whether a horse was spooked or merely stubborn. His instructions were clipped, but never unkind. She caught him studying her again and again, not in a way that made her uneasy, but in a way that made her feel seen. Finally, as they walked back toward the barns, she couldn't hold back her question any longer. "Why me?" she asked, wiping dust from her face. "You don't know anything about who I am or where I came from." He stopped walking and leaned against the fence, arms loosely folded. "I know enough." "Enough for what?" she pushed. His eyes drifted over her, tired, blistered, smeared with dirt, yet still standing tall. "You walked 10 miles to get here," he said. "Didn't flinch at hard work. You watch before you act. And you look at this ranch like it's something you want, not just a place to sleep." She opened her mouth, then closed it. She hadn't realized he noticed so much. Thomas continued, voice lower now. "People only look at a place that way when they've lost something and are hoping to build again." Her chest tightened. He was right. She didn't admit it out loud, but he saw it anyway. Later that day, he led her to the corral where the wild mare paced back and forth, her black mane whipping like a storm cloud. "This is Stormfire," he said, resting his hands on the top rail. "Smartest horse I've ever seen, but she's got more fire than sense." Elena watched the mare buck, snort, paw the dirt, untamed fury wrapped in muscle and instinct. "She's dangerous," Elena murmured. "She's misunderstood," Thomas countered. Like some people, the statement lingered between them, warm and unsettling. Then, slowly, he turned to face her fully. "You want to know the real offer?" he asked. Elena swallowed. "Yes, I don't just need a worker. I need someone I can teach. Someone with enough grit to learn how a ranch really runs. An apprentice." Her breath hitched. Apprenticeship wasn't just a job, it was a path, a future. "But why give something like that to me?" she whispered. He held her gaze, unguarded for the first time. Part 3 expanded approximately 700 words. Training Stormfire became less of a task and more of a daily ritual, one that tested Elena in ways she hadn't known she could be tested. Every morning, before the sun lifted its face over the hills, she stood in the corral waiting for the black mare to turn her wild eyes toward her. Some mornings, Stormfire charged the fence, snorting and pawing at the dirt. Other days, she simply stared, as if deciding whether Elena was worth acknowledging at all. Thomas always watched from the fence at first, arms folded, expression unreadable. He rarely intervened unless it was necessary. Instead, he wanted to see how Elena would respond, to the frustration, the fear, the unpredictable power of a creature no one had managed to reach. And every day, Elena showed up. She learned to move slowly, her steps careful, deliberate. She learned how to breathe in rhythm with the horse, how to let silence speak for her when words would only agitate the mare. She learned patience, real, bone-deep patience, the kind forged only through hours of dust, sweat, and uncertainty. Thomas respected that. She saw it in the small nods he gave when she handled Stormfire's sudden kicks, in the way his voice softened when giving her pointers, in the way he stayed late into the evening just so she wouldn't be training alone. As days turned into weeks, something else shifted too. Stormfire began to change. She still bucked, still lashed out at times, but the sharp edge of fear in her eyes dulled. Slowly, she began to approach Elena instead of retreating. First with hesitation, then with curiosity. The first time she allowed Elena to touch her muzzle, Thomas let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "You've got away with her," he said quietly from behind her. "No," Elena whispered, stroking Stormfire's neck. She just needed someone to listen. Thomas's gaze lingered on her, warm and thoughtful, but he said nothing more. The connection between Elena and the mare deepened over the weeks, and so did the connection between Elena and Thomas. It happened in small moments. The way he poured her a second cup of coffee without asking. The rare smile he let slip when she surprised him with a clever solution to a ranch problem. The evenings they spent repairing equipment side by side, not speaking, but sharing a silence that felt strangely comforting. One night, after a grueling day of work, they found themselves sitting outside on the porch, watching lightning flicker far off on the horizon. The air smelled of sage and coming rain. "You planning on staying long-term?" he asked suddenly. She stiffened, not from fear, but from the weight of the question. "If you still want me to." Thomas turned toward her, his profile stark against the dim sky. "Elena, this ranch hasn't felt alive since before my family passed. I thought it was just the way things were going to be. But then you showed up. And suddenly," he exhaled deeply. "Suddenly, the place feels like home again." Her heart fluttered painfully. She didn't know what to say, so she said nothing. The next afternoon marked a turning point. Stormfire, after weeks of slow progress, finally lowered her head and pressed her forehead against Elena's chest in full trust. The mare breathed softly, warm and gentle, accepting her completely. Elena felt tears sting her eyes. She looked up to find Thomas standing at the fence, his expression open in a way she had never seen. Pride, relief, something deeper. "You did it," he said, voice thick with emotion. "We did it," she corrected, smiling through her tears. He stepped into the corral, approaching her slowly, as though she, too, were a creature that required care and patience to reach. When he stopped in front of her, he removed his hat, running a hand through his hair like a man steadying himself. "Elena," he said quietly, "the day you came here, I offered you more than work. I offered you a place, a purpose, but there's something else, something I didn't know how to say." Her breath caught. The air around them felt charged. "You've brought life back into this ranch," he said. "And into me, more than I ever expected. More than I thought was possible again." Her pulse thudded wildly. She stepped closer, barely an inch between them now. "Thomas," she whispered, "I feel the same." His hand brushed her cheek, rough and warm. "Then stay," he murmured. "Stay not just for the ranch, but for us. If that's what you want." She looked around, the mare nuzzling her shoulder, the golden field stretching endlessly, the man who saw her strength long before she believed in it herself. "I'm staying," she said, voice steady with certainty. "For the ranch, for Stormfire, and for you."